If you lose your ID here in Thailand, you can be in a lot of trouble. Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to beautiful Chiang Mai. It is a rainy season, which means I have to dip and dodge through the rain to get out here and get some things done. But with rainy season comes the beautiful greenery. I'm at one of my favorite restaurants up here in Dorset called Choon, and they have covered everything up because of the rain, but it is still beautiful here. There's our little waterfall there. So today I want to talk to you about your ID. Think about this. When you were 16 years old, getting that ID, that driver's license, was probably one of the best moments of your life up to that age. But let's go a little deeper. All right, so we know that losing your ID can be a pain in the butt. For instance, in the United States, you may have to go to the Department of Motor Vehicles, get into the queue, wait for your number to be called, start the process all over again as far as getting a driver's license. In the meantime, you know, going to the bank could be difficult. You're driving without a driver's license, so a lot of things can come from that. But in this video, I want to talk about what it means to figuratively and literally to lose your ID. But just to share a story with you, a few months ago I had dropped my passport off at my visa agency, and they were going to do my 90-day check-in for me. And so I never travel with my original passport. I always have a copy of it, and I have a digital copy on my phone. But at that time I had both my wallet and my passport with me. So it's about noon and I'm heading home, and I'm about, I don't know, 10 minutes away from home, and there's a restaurant I love to visit, so I stopped by there for lunch. I had my man bag with me, and I had a wonderful lunch. And I paid, I left, and when I got home, it was business as usual. But about 5 o'clock, I'm thinking, okay, I gotta go run an errand. So I looked for my bag and I couldn't find it anywhere. And I'm trying to think what could have happened. Did it fall off the motorbike while I was driving? And then it dawned on me that I had left it at the restaurant on the table when I was eating. So I rushed back to the restaurant, and as soon as I walked in the door, the lady looked up, recognized me. She went into the safe and pulled out my bag. She said that another guest had sold on the table and brought it to her. So I really dodged a bullet there, and everything was where it should have been, including I had about 2,500 baht in there also, and nothing was touched at all. But it just led me to think about, you know, when people lose their identity, and not just that physical card, that driver's license, that passport, but their identity when they retire. Now, there are those who say that my job does not define me, and I do understand that. But whether you're a doctor, a lawyer, a CEO, firefighter, nurse, teacher, you are identified by the job you do to a certain extent. And imagine this, you spend at least 1/3 of your life at work. For most people, you're working 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, whatever the case may be, then that's 1/3 of your life that you're going to work. But not only that, if you're in a situation like I was where you're on call, that's even more hours that you find yourself out working who you are, that which you're identified for. How many of you have ever walked through a grocery store or through a mall and you've been identified by your job? If you're a teacher, some students saying, hey, that's my teacher. That's my teacher over there, you know. Or in my case, as a deputy sheriff, you know, kids used to wave across the grocery store, across the mall, "Hey, Deputy Jones," those kind of things. And not only that, you know, when you have a conversation with someone that you meet for the first time, one of the main topics of conversation that comes up is, what do you do for a living? Because that's what you're identified for. We do become what we do to a degree. And that can be scary, because when you turn that ID in for the last time, if you're a teacher, you take all your paperwork, you turn in your school ID, or whatever job you're at for the last time, you are turning it in. And it's not as easy as some may think it is. So that's just a little bit about, you know, that physical ID that you have on you, something you've been doing for 10, 20, 30 years or more, and you're moving that away, and it's no longer going to be a part of you to the degree that you can be identified as such. But it goes a little deeper than that. So what if you retired and you're thinking of, in terms of, when I retire, then I'm going to be this full-time Meemaw, Pawpaw, you know, grandfather, grandmother, and then you decide that I'm going to move far away, I'm going to move to another country. And even though that doesn't take that identity away from you, it makes it a little harder to be able to hold that grandbaby, or to be able to run around and play with your grandkids. That's part of your identity that may seem not to go as deep, to be as close, because you're going to be 1,000 miles away. You know, we talk about losing your ID. One of the things that I thought about when I was preparing to do this is, what happens if you feel like your identity was stolen from you? So losing your ID and having your identity stolen is two different things. So if you lose your wallet, hopefully nothing bad happens. It gets turned in to the police. And then, speaking of, I was really surprised when I first got here, and I'm going through the Facebook groups and seeing how many people lose their passports here in the Chiang Mai area. How many are able to go to the police, or the tourist police, and people turn their stuff back in. A lot of people have recovered their stuff by just going to the police and reporting it. Now, with stolen identity, it's different, because someone intentionally took something from you. They may even try to, you know, open a new credit account in your name. It can get real messy. It's against the law, etc., etc. But when I speak of stolen identity, from the perspective of who you are when you moved here, I met a guy who was to retire at 20 years. He was a software engineer, and at 14 years he was fired. And he was so angry, he didn't want to go find another job. He was just angry, and he wanted to move to Thailand after 20 years, but he decided to speed up the process, and he moved early. Now, when I talked to him, it felt like something that happened maybe last week, last month, but it's something that happened 6 years ago. So being fired and being laid off, or being laid off from a job, can have a very powerful negative impact on you. You lose that identity. It was taken away from you. And from what I see from this gentleman that I met, is it's really hard for him to be in the moment, because he keeps reliving his identity being stolen. So you're probably wondering by now, Fred, is there any good news? You know, I mean, why are you saying all this stuff? Is there anything that we do about this, or how did you handle it? Well, let me tell you how I handled it. And just to give you some backstory for people that haven't been following the channel for a long time, you know, I retired after 26 years from law enforcement, which also included corrections. But I remember in 1997, I got my first job in the profession at a prison. And I knew now I belong to a profession. This is great. I can, start planning life 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And when I got hired on, like any place else, I did a lot of paperwork. And then I got this ID card that I was correctional officer for the state of Florida. And I carried that with pride for the longest time until I made a transfer to the county jail, at which point I had to turn my state of Florida card back in. I lost that ID. At the jail, processed, got another ID. Worked at the jail as a correction officer. Then I transferred over to the road patrol, and I became a deputy sheriff after going back to the academy. And now I get this ID that says deputy sheriff, and man, that was one of my proudest moments. It was a great feeling. As the years go by, you get ID'd in this profession in different ways. I was a school resource deputy, I was a detective, I was a public information officer. But what I did notice that as I got promoted from, deputy sheriff to master deputy to corporal to sergeant to lieutenant, you keep getting all these IDs. You exchange one for the other, and you get identified based on whatever that title is on your ID card, and the expectations go up as you move up the ladder as well. But what happened was in 2012, before I got promoted to the lieutenant, and I think I just got promoted to sergeant. No, I hadn't got promoted to sergeant yet, but I went to a conference. I was a hostage negotiator at the time as well as my regular duties. And so at this conference, there was the psychologist from the FBI and was talking about taking care of yourself as a law enforcement officer. This was the first time I heard numbers that resembled what she said. And she said that on average, law enforcement who retire live approximately 5 years after they retire, 5 to 6 years. And so that really hit me. And then some other numbers came up that, 57 was the age, or 65 was the age, according to some studies that law enforcement officers live up to based on the stress level. She talked about them having that high adrenaline they carry for all of their career, and then they have this crash. One of the things that she said, and I actually got a visual of it when she said this, she said, do not retire and sit on the couch and die because you do not have an identity now that you've retired. And that stuck with me. That stuck with me, say, 10 years later, 12, 13 years later, when I finally retired. And I said to myself, well, what would be my identity when I retire, especially when I retire and move to another country? And so I started planting the seeds at that time, what I wanted to do. I watched enough YouTube videos to say, that's what I want to do. I want to help people. I want to put information out there that they could, use to make an informed decision whether or not they want to move over here. I wanted to be a lifelong learner. And so I started writing all these things down, what I wanted to do. And heading into 2 years, 2 years in this country, 18, 19 months now, I've been over here. And I've done the content creation, started the YouTube channel. I do help people. The only thing that I wish I could do is I wish I could volunteer, because unless you're on a work visa, you really can't do anything. But even on your retirement visa, you're not supposed to do any kind of volunteer work. So be careful with that if you decide that. But everything I wanted to do, I started putting into fruition. I'm taking online classes now. I'm doing the YouTube channel like I mentioned before. So my identity card now says that Fred Jones is a helper. Fred Jones is a lifelong learner. And that is so important, people. When I asked people, before I retired, I asked people who were retiring before me, what are you going to do? And a lot of them said absolutely nothing. Or I'm going to play golf every day. And what you don't realize is how much time you have once you retire. Those 8 hours a day that you were given to someone else are now yours. the after hours where you're not worried about what you used to worry about, those 8 hours that you worked and you bring that home with you. It's all gone. But identity is very important, people. So yeah, I just wanted to run that by you, and let me know what you think in the comments. If you're getting ready to retire, what are you going to do? What will your new identification card say who you are? And for those who retired and especially moved overseas, how did you make that transition? Are you still making that transition? Do you think it's going to be difficult for you? Will you regret turning in your ID cards? Please let me know down in the comments. And as always, I truly appreciate you taking the time to watch my channel. And I appreciate every week when I see the comments after I post. So thank you so very much. I love you, and I will see you in the next video.